I'll read. This is Pratt's Son, issue 4 from the 90s. I will explain Pratt's Son because it has been a while since I looked at an issue, and those first 3 issues didn't bring in the big views. I mean, none of my videos bring in the big views. But one of them Pratt's Son videos doesn't even have a single like. The other thing, despite this atrocious cover here, this is the issue where the series starts getting more interesting. One of the big problems for me was that we have spent 3 flipping issues on Pratt's Son fighting a discount Hulk. Okay, so let's explain Pratt's Son. Pratt's Son is the son of the Golden Age superhero, the Pratts, hence the name Pratt's Son. I spent 2 hours last night trying to find a good picture of the Pratts, and I made the discovery he has never once featured on a cover as the main focus. I have also blown a major mystery featured in this series about who his parents are with the name Pratt's Son. Pratt's Son's powers are he absorbs energy and then explodes like a bomb. Now, I know one of my viewers is going to say they have never heard of this character, but they also hadn't heard of Gambit from the Excellent Men, so it's not remotely surprising that they haven't heard of Pratt's Son. Pratt's Son actually has quite an interesting and consistent history until a pathetic man-child killed them off for edginess. Starting next issue, Pratt's Son becomes interlinked with the Tiny Titans until that series is cancelled. But he appears briefly in the relaunched series, and then he is one of the main members in the first few years of the relaunched series. I'm getting ahead of myself there though, because where I know Pratt's Son from, and where most people would know him from, I would guess is from his role in 0 Hours Christmas in Time. He is among the last heroes standing, the ones left to deal with Green Lanterns, the Jordan Albert version, trying to remake reality. Really like seeing a new character getting a push like that. Maybe they're gone a bit far with it, but he's pretty much instrumental in resolving the story. And as some people really hate on 0 Hours Christmas in Time, but the day that I read that final issue without the rest of the series before it remains an absolute highlight of stuff that I have read for this channel. That issue by itself is amazing. Then we get to the John Jeffries days, where he first, as Pratt's Son disfigured. John Jeffries doesn't really have any talent, so he disguises it with violence against teenage characters. So Pratt's Son started wearing a mask to hide his destroyed face, and John Jeffries wrote him terribly as a petulant child, obsessed with vanity and his beauty. He joined John Jeffries' Awful Justice Society of Superheroes, which had far too many characters in it. And after being written poorly for a few years, as you would expect, John Jeffries senselessly killed off another member of the Tiny Titans in a very graphic fashion. The nice thing is, recently, Pratt's son has apparently returned to life after being left dead for a decade. It would be a cause for celebration, except John Jeffries stepped in and has taken over writing any and all Justice Society of Superheroes projects and dropped Pratt's son fast. He is probably going to re-establish his death as canon again because he is fucking petty and pathetic. I discovered last night, and I must stress there is no verification of this, but I would believe it. I read that John Jeffries tried to groom a teenage girl who won a DC contest or something. It's funny how most of these writers that I say are both shit at writing and cunts in general turn out to be sex pests and predators. There will come a day, unlike any other, where my Martin Quaid conspiracy theory doesn't remotely sound insane and deranged. There is some tonal problems here. The Hulk rip-off, he tears a person in half here. A random bystander. Was this panel guest written by John Jeffries? It's really odd. It's not referred to. It's not treated as a plot point either. Pratt's son doesn't go, okay, now you have gone too far, or out like that. It is just a random death of an innocent pedestrian that has no relevance to the script. Then we get to Pratt's son's exotic love interest. If you were a new character in the 90s at DC, you were given an exotic love interest. I'm saying that to avoid having to acknowledge a horrendously misspelt name or a bland and quite ugly costume. There is a lot of conspiracy with a secret lab, and that stuff is quite fucking boring. We have also had subplot pages in the first few issues with retconned Golden Age character Simon Williams. I will finally explain this character to you as well. Simon Williams comes from Young Stir Fries, a series I have never read, and every time I ask if it is any good, nobody ever says yes. Simon Williams was, as were most of the Young Stir Fries team, introduced to replace the flagship DC heroes involved in World War II. Simon Williams was the character that replaced Superman in DC Golden Age continuity. Yes, replacing some of the most iconic and recognisable superheroes in the world with characters like these is ludicrous. Simon Williams is the only one from the Young Stir Fries who really has any life outside of that title, and that life is mostly all in Pratt's son. In true Wonder Man fashion, pun not intended, but I really wish it had been, In true Wonder Man fashion, Simon Williams doesn't have a costume. He just sports casual wear. He is investigating a drug ring, and these two plot lines finally intersect this issue after the Simon Williams parts felt incredibly unrelated in the previous ones. I should also mention by this point, a huge part of the appeal of Pratt's son to me is that he kind of looks like me. His haircut is mostly identical to mine. It gets longer near the end of the series, but from about this issue to issue 14 or so, he pretty much has my hair. And look at that lovely head of hair. Not a single bald patch to be found anywhere on it. At least 4 girls have told me I have nice hair, and none of them were me mam. Pratt's son and Hulk, they end up in the middle of Simon Williams's drug bust. And the best bit is maybe this, because the stupid Hulk character dies, and I am saved from having to read yet another issue of Pratt's son fighting this bad guy that only ever deserved, at most, a single issue. We find out that this drug enterprise is being ran by Baron Blitzkrieg. I didn't know much about this bad guy, but he did feature in a bunch of Stir Fry Squadron stories. And from looking at covers, it seems young Stir Fries too. The plot has not only gotten more exciting than Pratt's son fighting a random monster, but with the next issue, we start getting the Tiny Titans permanently involved in the Life of Pratt's son series, because he joins them. Pratt's son is an interesting one, because this in many ways is the absolute definition of an average 90s bland comic. I think an element that stops it from feeling so pointless is that the character did have a robust life alongside and after his title ended, until Pratt's son starts taking daily regiments of Rogaine to combat a receding hairline. Make mine 7 thumbs up.